The Golden Cage. The morning sun glinted off the glass facade of Hassan Technologies as Fareed Hassan stepped out of his custom Bentley. At 32, he had achieved what most people could only dream of: a tech empire worth billions, recognition as one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the country, and now a marriage that would solidify his place among the elite. "Mr. Hassan, the florist needs your approval on the arrangements for the reception," his assistant Tessa said, falling into step beside him as he strode through the lobby. "Tell them whatever Vivienne wants is fine," Fareed replied, his attention already on his smartphone, scanning through the morning's emails. The elevator whisked them to the top floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city he'd conquered. 8 years ago, he'd been coding in a small apartment. Now he owned half the skyline. "Your father called again," Tessa continued, her voice careful. "He wanted to confirm you'll be attending the dinner with the Blackwoods tonight." Fareed suppressed a sigh. Since his engagement to Vivienne Blackwood 6 months ago, his life had become an endless parade of social obligations and wedding preparations. The Blackwoods were old money: shipping, real estate, politics. His own family, immigrants who had worked their way up from nothing, viewed this marriage as the final step in their ascension. "Tell him I'll be there," he said, settling behind his desk. "And reschedule my meeting with the development team." Once alone, Fareed loosened his tie and leaned back in his chair. On his desk sat the latest wedding invitation sample, cream-colored paper with gold embossing announcing the union of Fareed Hassan and Vivienne Blackwood. It looked perfect. Everything about this wedding was perfect. So why did he feel nothing when he looked at it? His phone buzzed with a text from Vivienne. "Don't forget, cake tasting at 3. Mother will join us." Fareed typed a quick confirmation and set the phone down. Eleanor Blackwood's presence meant another afternoon of thinly veiled scrutiny. Despite his wealth, he remained an outsider to her, the son of immigrants who had somehow managed to catch her daughter's eye. "Mr. Hassan," Tessa's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Blackwood is on line 1. Robert Blackwood, his future father-in-law and one of the most powerful men in the country." Fareed straightened his tie before answering. "Robert, good morning." "Fareed, my boy, how's the market treating you today?" Robert's voice boomed through the speaker, jovial, yet commanding. "Up 2 points since opening. The new software launch is exceeding projections." "Excellent! I told the board at Meridian you'd be a valuable addition. Once you're officially family, we'll get you a seat at the table." This was how it had been since the engagement. Doors opening, opportunities materializing, the Blackwood name smoothing, his path even further. A golden cage, gilded with privilege. "I appreciate that, Robert. Eleanor mentioned you're finalizing the guest list. I've added a few names, some people from Washington who should be there. The governor, a couple of senators." "Of course," Fareed agreed, though they had already invited over 400 people he barely knew. After the call, Fareed walked to the window. Below, the city pulsed with life, millions of stories unfolding. Somewhere in his memory, a different story lingered, one of simpler dreams shared on rooftops under starlit skies. He had met Vivienne at a charity gala 3 years ago. She was beautiful, sophisticated, and shared his drive for success. Their relationship made sense on paper, the ambitious entrepreneur and the cultured heiress. They respected each other, enjoyed each other's company. If it lacked the fire of first love, well, that was the cost of growing up. That evening at the Blackwoods mansion, Fareed found himself seated beside Eleanor at the long mahogany dining table. "The wedding planner tells me you haven't been very involved in the preparations," she noted, her voice carrying just enough edge to make it a criticism. "I trust Vivienne's judgment," he replied diplomatically. "A marriage isn't just about the wedding day, Fareed. It's about building something lasting together." Across the table, Vivienne was deep in conversation with a family friend, her blonde hair catching the light from the chandelier. She glanced at him and smiled. a practiced, perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Farid stood on his balcony with a glass of scotch. The city lights stretched before him, a testament to all he had achieved. In 2 months, he would marry into one of the most influential families in the country. His parents would finally have the validation they had sought since arriving in this country with nothing. His company would gain connections that money couldn't buy. Yet as he stood there, surrounded by all the trappings of success, an unexpected emptiness echoed within him. The face that came to mind wasn't Vivian's, but one he had tried for years to forget. Warm brown eyes, a smile that transformed her entire face, and a laugh that had once been his favorite sound in the world. Nadia Rahimi, his first love. The girl from his neighborhood who had believed in him before anyone else did. Farid drained his glass, pushing the memory away. That chapter of his life was closed. Childhood dreams had given way to adult realities. He had a dynasty to build, and sentimentality had no place in it. Little did he know that fate had other plans, and that the past he thought he had left behind was about to collide with his carefully constructed future. Whispers from the past. The ballroom of the Grand Imperial Hotel shimmered with crystal chandeliers and arrangements of white orchids, a preview of the wedding extravagance to come. Farid adjusted his cufflinks as he surveyed the engagement, party his future in-laws had insisted upon. 200 of the city's most influential people mingled beneath the vaulted ceilings, their combined net worth enough to fund a small nation. There you are, Vivian appeared at his side, resplendent, in a designer gown that probably cost more than what most people made in a month. She slipped her arm through his, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. Daddy wants us to meet the Prestons. They just flew in from Geneva. Farid nodded, allowing himself to be guided through the crowd. This was the dance he had learned. To perform, shake hands, exchange pleasantries, discuss business opportunities and market trends. The Vivian on his arm tonight was in her element, the polished socialite who had been groomed for this world since birth. Mr. Hassan, your vision for quantum computing is revolutionary, Preston said after introductions were made. My firm would be interested in discussing potential investments. I'd be happy to set up a meeting next week, Farid replied automatically. As the conversation continued, Farid's attention drifted to the servers circulating with trays of champagne and canapés. The Blackwoods had hired an exclusive catering company for the event, one known for their discretion and attention to detail. That's when he saw her. She was arranging a display of petit fours at the dessert table, her head bent in concentration. Even in profile, there was something achingly familiar about the curve of her cheek, the way she tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. When she looked up, time seemed to stop. Nadia Rahimi. Older now, her face more defined, but unmistakably her. The same warm brown eyes that had once looked at him with complete trust and adoration. Their gazes locked across the room, and Farid saw the moment of recognition flash across her face, followed quickly by shock and something that looked like pain. Farid? Vivian's voice pulled him back to the present. Mr. Preston asked you a question. I apologize, he said, forcing himself to focus. Could you repeat that? The rest of the conversation passed in a blur. All he could think about was Nadia, serving canapés at his engagement party. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. As soon as he could politely extract himself, Farid made his way toward the dessert table, but Nadia was no longer there. He scanned the room, finally spotting her slipping through a service door. Excuse me, he said to Vivian. I need to check something with the catering staff. Before she could respond, he was moving through the crowd, following Nadia's path. The service corridor was a stark contrast to the opulence of the ballroom, utilitarian and brightly lit. He caught a glimpse of her turning a corner and quickened his pace. Nadia, he called out. She froze but didn't turn around immediately. When she did, her expression was carefully composed, professional. "Mr. Hassan, congratulations on your engagement." Her voice was steady, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "Nadia, I—" He trailed off, suddenly at a loss for words. What could he possibly say? "I didn't expect to see you here." "I work for Stellar Catering now," she said simply. "I should get back to work." "Wait," he said, taking a step forward. "It's been, what, 10 years? Can we talk for a moment?" She glanced at her watch. "I have a 15-minute break in an hour. There's a staff area on the mezzanine level." Before he could respond, she was gone, disappearing through another door. Fareed returned to the party, going through the motions of socializing while his mind raced. Nadia was here, in his life again, if only peripherally. The girl who had once known him better than anyone, who had shared his dreams when they were nothing more than fantasies. An hour later, he excused himself from a conversation with a tech journalist and made his way to the mezzanine level. He found Nadia sitting on a bench near a service elevator, still in her catering uniform, but with her hair now loose around her shoulders. "You came," she said, making room for him on the bench. "Of course I came." He sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "How have you been, Nadia?" She gave a small laugh that held little humor. "That's a big question." "I tried to find you," he said quietly. "After your family moved, you disappeared." "We didn't just move, Fareed. We lost everything." She met his gaze directly now. "My father's business collapsed after the lawsuit. The bank took our house. We ended up in my uncle's cramped apartment across the country." The weight of what she'd been through settled in his chest. While he'd been building his empire, she had been struggling to survive. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "How could you?" She shrugged. "We were 18. You were heading to MIT with your scholarship. I couldn't exactly call you and say, 'Hey, I'm dropping out of school to work full-time to help my family.'" A heavy silence fell between them, filled with all the years and experiences that had shaped them into different people. "Your fiancée is beautiful," Nadia said finally. "Yes, she is." "Are you happy?" The question was simple but loaded with meaning. Before he could formulate an answer, her phone buzzed. "I have to get back," she said, standing up. "The dessert course is being served. Can I see you again?" The words were out before he could stop them. "Just to talk. There's so much I want to know about your life." She hesitated, then pulled out a small notepad and pen from her pocket, scribbling something down. "My number," she said, handing him the paper. "But Fareed, I'm not the same girl you knew." "Neither am I the same boy," he replied, carefully folding the paper. Back at the party, Vivian found him immediately. "Where have you been? The Prestons? We're looking for you." "Just needed some air," he said, taking a champagne flute from a passing server. Over the rim of his glass, he caught sight of Nadia arranging chocolate truffles on a silver platter, her movements efficient and practiced. "Is something wrong?" Vivian asked, following his gaze. "You seem distracted?" "Just wedding nerves, I suppose," he said with a forced smile. Later that night, as they were leaving, Eleanor Blackwood pulled him aside. "I noticed you speaking with one of the catering staff earlier. Is there a problem we should address with the company?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp. Nothing escaped her notice. "No problem at all," Fareed assured her. "Just clarifying some details about the menu for the reception." She seemed satisfied with his explanation, but as he helped Vivian into their waiting car, he felt a growing unease. The carefully constructed world he had built was suddenly on shaky ground. At home, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the phone number Nadia had given him. Outside, the city lights blinked like distant stars, the same stars they had once sat beneath, making plans for a future together. His phone chimed with a text from Vivienne. "Don't forget, meeting with the wedding planner tomorrow at 11. Farid set the phone aside and unfolded Nadia's note again. More than just her number, she had written a short message. "Some paths are meant to cross only once. Be well, F." But some paths, he thought, circled back when you least expected them to. And sometimes, the universe gave you a second chance to make a different choice. With a deep breath, he picked up his phone and began to type. Shattered reflections. Rain pattered against the windows of the small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, far from the glossy high-rises and exclusive restaurants Farid usually frequented. He checked his watch, 2:15 p.m. He'd told Tessa to clear his afternoon, claiming a meeting with potential investors. The door opened, bringing a gust of wind, and Nadia, her hair damp from the rain, cheeks flushed. She spotted him in the corner booth and hesitated before walking over, unwinding her scarf. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Farid said, standing briefly as she slid into the seat across from him. "Neither was I," she admitted. She looked different in her own clothes, jeans, a burgundy sweater, simple gold earrings, more like herself. More like the Nadia he remembered. A waitress came to take their order. Black coffee for him, chai latte for her, still her favorite after all these years. The familiarity of this small detail hit him with unexpected force. "How have you been, really?" he asked once they were alone. Nadia cradled her mug, steam rising between them. "Surviving. Moving forward. It hasn't been an easy road, but I'm still standing." "Tell me what happened. After you left." She took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to revisit those painful memories. "My father's business partner embezzled everything, then framed my dad for it. The lawsuit drained what little savings we had. We moved to stay with my uncle in Philadelphia. I got a job waiting tables, took night classes when I could afford them." Farid listened intently as she recounted her journey. The struggles, the setbacks, the small victories, how she'd worked her way through culinary school, her dreams of becoming a chef temporarily set aside to help support her parents after her father's heart attack 3 years ago. "Now I'm back in the city working for Stellar until I can save enough to open my own place," she concluded. "Nothing fancy, just a small neighborhood restaurant with food that reminds people of home." The passion in her voice when she spoke of her dream resonated with him. It was the same fire he'd once had, before spreadsheets and board meetings and strategic marriages became his reality. "And you?" she asked, her eyes meeting his. "I've seen the magazine covers, the success stories. Hassan Technologies is everywhere. It's been a whirlwind," he acknowledged. "Everything happened so fast after the algorithm took off. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of what we were building." "I always knew you'd make it," she said softly. "Even back then, you had something special." The sincerity in her voice made his chest tighten. "We both had dreams. And look at you now, engaged to Vivienne Blackwood. That's quite a step up from our neighborhood." There was no bitterness in her tone, just a statement of fact, but it made him uncomfortable nonetheless. "How did you meet her?" Nadia asked. "A charity gala. Her family foundation was honoring innovators in technology." He paused. "She's intelligent, driven. We make sense together." "Makes sense," Nadia repeated thoughtfully. "Not exactly how most people describe falling in love." Farid shifted in his seat. "When you reach a certain level, relationships become more practical. Is that what you want? Practical?" The question hung between them, unanswered. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows. "Do you remember the night on the roof of my building?" he asked suddenly. "When we watched that meteor shower?" A smile touched her lips. "You brought your mother's baklava and that terrible wine we thought was so sophisticated, and we talked about opening a restaurant together. Your food, my business sense. The Starlight Cafe, she recalled, with tables on the roof so people could eat under the stars. We had it all planned out. We were kids, Fareed. Kids with big dreams and no idea how the real world worked. Sometimes I think those kids knew more about what matters than we do now, he said quietly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the years between them dissolved. Then Nadia's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. I have to go, she said, checking the message. Early shift tomorrow. As they stood to leave, Fareed found himself reluctant to end their conversation. Can I see you again? She hesitated. Fareed, I don't think that's a good idea. You're getting married in 6 weeks. As friends, he clarified quickly, there's still so much to catch up on. Outside, under the shelter of the cafe's awning, she studied his face. Friends, she repeated, not quite a question, not quite an agreement. I'll text you, he said, watching as she hurried through the rain to the bus stop. You've been distracted all evening, Vivian remarked later that night as they dined at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the city. Is everything all right with the Singapore expansion? Fareed pulled himself back to the present. Just some unexpected complications. Nothing serious. She nodded, accepting his explanation without pressing further. That was their relationship. Respectful, undemanding, built on mutual understanding rather than passion. He had always appreciated her independence, the fact that she didn't need constant reassurance or attention. Now, he wondered if they had simply built walls so high that neither could truly see the other. Mother wants to finalize the seating arrangements this weekend, she continued, and the floral designer needs your approval on the centerpieces. Whatever you think is best, he said automatically. Vivian set down her fork. That's what you always say, Fareed. Sometimes I wonder if you care about this wedding at all. The edge in her voice caught him off guard. Of course I do. Do you? Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against her wine glass. Because lately, it feels like you're just going through the motions. For the first time, he noticed something beneath her composed exterior. Uncertainty, perhaps even vulnerability. It was so unexpected that he didn't know how to respond. I'm sorry, he said. Finally, work has been demanding, but that's no excuse. I'll be more present. She seemed to accept this, but a new tension lingered between them. Over the next 2 weeks, Fareed found himself drawn into a dangerous pattern. Coffee with Nadia turned into walks through the park, conversations that stretched for hours. They were careful, meeting in out-of-the-way places, keeping a respectful distance. Just friends reconnecting, he told himself, even as he found himself counting the hours until he would see her again. With each meeting, the walls he had built around his past began to crumble. Nadia knew him, the real him, not the polished entrepreneur or the suitable fiancé. She challenged him, made him laugh, reminded him of the person he had once been. You've changed, she told him one evening as they sat on a bench overlooking the river. You're more guarded now. Success requires a certain image, he replied. Does it require you to lose yourself? The question lingered with him as he attended dinners and meetings, as he nodded along to wedding plans and investment strategies. Who was he becoming? Who had he already become? Meanwhile, the date of the wedding loomed closer. Invitations were sent, gifts began arriving, and the press speculated about what was being called the social event of the year. Mr. Hassan, Tessa said one morning, Ms. Blackwood called. She's concerned that you missed the tasting for the rehearsal dinner yesterday. Fareed closed his eyes briefly. He had been with Nadia, helping her look at potential locations for her restaurant. I'll call her right away. That evening, Vivian confronted him in his penthouse. Where were you yesterday afternoon? I called. Your office. And Tessa said you were in a meeting, but Robert saw you downtown, nowhere near your office. I needed to clear my head, he said, avoiding her gaze. The pressure of the wedding, the merger negotiations, I just needed some space. Space, she repeated. Is that what you need from me? From us? The hurt in her voice made him realize how unfair he was being. Vivienne deserved better than half-truths and divided attention. No, he said, taking her hands. I'm sorry. I've been neglecting you, and that's unacceptable. She studied him for a long moment. Farid, if you're having doubts... No doubts, he assured her quickly. Too quickly. But that night, as she slept beside him, doubts were exactly what kept him awake. He had built his life on careful decisions and strategic planning. Now everything was in question because of feelings he thought he had outgrown years ago. The next morning, he made a decision. He would meet Nadia one last time, explain that they couldn't continue seeing each other even as friends. He owed Vivienne his loyalty and commitment. The past was past. They met at the same cafe where they had reconnected. Rain fell again, as if the weather itself was providing a bookend to their brief reunion. I can't see you anymore, he said after they had sat in silence for several minutes. Nadia nodded slowly. I know. It's not fair to Vivienne. It's not just about being fair to Vivienne, she said quietly. It's about being honest with yourself, Farid. What do you really want? What I want doesn't matter, he replied. I have responsibilities, commitments. To whom? Your family? The Blackwoods? What about your commitment to yourself? Frustration rose within him. You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. No, I don't, she agreed. But I understand. Enough to know that living someone else's dream is a slow kind of death. Her words hit him like a physical blow. Before he could respond, the cafe door opened and Eleanor Blackwood walked in, accompanied by her personal assistant. Her eyes scanned the room, widening slightly when she spotted Farid. Farid, she said, approaching their table with measured steps. What a surprise. Eleanor, he stood quickly. I was just having coffee before heading to my next meeting. Her gaze shifted to Nadia, taking in her simple clothes, her lack of designer accessories. And who is your friend? This is Nadia Rahimi, an old acquaintance from the neighborhood where I grew up. Nadia extended her hand, which Eleanor took briefly. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Blackwood. Indeed, Eleanor replied, her tone cool. Farid, I hope we'll see you at dinner tonight. Vivienne has been concerned about your recent absences. I'll be there, he promised. After she left, Nadia stood gathering her things. You should go. Your real life is waiting for you. Nadia, goodbye, Farid. She leaned forward, pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek, and was gone, leaving him alone with the wreckage of his certainties. That evening, as he dressed for dinner with the Blackwoods, his phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photograph, faded and slightly creased, of two teenagers sitting on a rooftop, the city lights spread out below them. His arm was around her shoulders, both of them laughing at some forgotten joke. The caption read simply, Remember who you were. As he stared at their younger selves, full of hope and possibilities, Farid felt something inside him finally break free. Bridges burned. The Blackwood estate sprawled across 10 manicured acres, a monument to old money and refined taste. As Farid's car passed through the wrought iron gates, he felt as if he were entering a fortress rather than a family home. The Pacos dinner that awaited him would not be a casual affair, not after Eleanor had seen him with Nadia. Vivienne greeted him at the door, elegant in a navy dress that complemented her cool blonde beauty. You're late, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Traffic, he offered, though they both knew it was an excuse. Inside, Robert Blackwood was holding court in the drawing room, regaling guests with stories of his latest hunting expedition. Eleanor stood nearby, her gaze sharp as it landed on Fareed. "There he is," Robert boomed, clapping Fareed on the shoulder. "The man who's revolutionizing the tech industry and joining our family in the process." Fareed smiled and shook hands, going through the motions while his mind raced. The photograph Nadia had sent burned in his memory, a reminder of authenticity, of a time when his dreams had been his own. During dinner, seated between Vivienne and a state senator, Fareed found himself observing the gathering as if from a distance. The practiced laughter, the careful opinions, the subtle jockeying for position, it was a dance he had learned to perform flawlessly. But tonight, it felt hollow. "Fareed was telling me about his plans to expand into Southeast Asian markets," Robert was saying, steering the conversation toward business. "Actually," Fareed heard himself say, "I've been reconsidering that strategy." The table fell quiet. Challenging. Robert Blackwood's business acumen was not something done lightly, especially not in his own home. "Oh?" Robert's eyebrows rose. "What's prompted this reconsideration?" "I've been thinking about our original mission, using technology to improve people's daily lives, not just make them more efficient consumers." The words came from a place inside him that had been dormant for years. "Maybe it's time to refocus on innovation rather than expansion." Vivienne was staring at him, her expression unreadable. Eleanor's lips had thinned to a tight line. "Bold thinking," Robert said after a moment, his tone indicating he thought it was anything but. "Perhaps we should discuss this further in private." The conversation moved on, but Fareed could feel the tension lingering. He had veered from the script, and in the Blackwood world that was unforgivable. After dinner, as the guests migrated to the terrace for cognac and cigars, Eleanor cornered him in the hallway. "That was quite a performance at dinner," she said, her voice low. "Almost as interesting as your coffee date this afternoon." Fareed met her gaze steadily. "Nadia is an old friend." "An old friend who happens to be working for our caterer?" "The timing seems convenient." "What exactly are you implying, Eleanor?" She adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous habit he'd noticed before. "Vivienne deserves a husband who is fully committed, not one who's reminiscing about the past with some girl from the old neighborhood." The condescension in her tone ignited something in him. "That girl has more integrity and genuine ambition than most of the people at this dinner." Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. "I see. Well, I hope you'll consider carefully what you're risking here. The Blackwood name opens doors that would otherwise remain firmly closed, even to someone of your, accomplishments." Before he could respond, Vivienne appeared, her expression suggesting she had heard at least part of their exchange. "Mother, Senator Mitchell is asking for you." Eleanor gave Fareed one last measuring look before gliding away, leaving him alone. "With his fiancée?" "What was that about?" Vivienne asked. "Your mother expressing concerns about my commitment to our marriage." "And is she right to be concerned?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. Vivienne had always been perceptive, but she rarely confronted issues so bluntly. "Let's go somewhere we can talk," he suggested. They slipped away from the party, finding refuge in Robert's study, a masculine space of leather and mahogany that smelled of cigar smoke and expensive whiskey. "Who is she?" Vivienne asked as soon as the door closed behind them. "The woman you were with today." Fareed considered deflecting but decided against it. Vivienne deserved honesty, even if it was uncomfortable. "Her name is Nadia. We grew up together. We were close." "How close?" "We were in love," he admitted. "Or at least what teenagers think is love. We had plans, dreams. Then her family had to move suddenly and we lost touch." Vivian moved to the window, her back to him. And now she's back? Yes. And you're meeting her for coffee, looking at her like she holds the answers to questions you've forgotten to ask. He was surprised by the perception in her words. You saw us? I didn't have to. Mother described the way you looked at her. She turned to face him. You've never looked at me that way, Fareed. The truth of her statement hung in the air between them. He couldn't deny it. Our relationship is different, he said finally. It's built on mutual respect, shared goals. But not love, she finished for him. Not passion. Vivienne, no, let me finish. She took a deep breath. I've always known what our marriage would be. A partnership, a merger of compatible interests. I accepted that because I thought we wanted the same things. But lately, I've been wondering if either of us knows what we truly want. Her candor surprised him. What do you mean? I mean that I've been playing my part just as you've been playing yours. The perfect power couple uniting two dynasties. She gave a small, sad laugh. It's what my parents want. What your parents want. But is it what we want? For the first time since they had met, Fareed felt he was seeing the real Vivienne, not the polished socialite or the strategic fiancée, but a woman with her own doubts and desires. What do you want, Vivienne? She touched her engagement ring, turning it thoughtfully. I thought I wanted this life. The social standing, the influence, the carefully curated image. Now I'm not so sure. What changed? I met someone too, she admitted quietly. Julian, my riding instructor. Nothing happened, she added quickly. But when I'm with him, I feel alive, myself. Not Vivienne Blackwood, heiress and perfect daughter, but just Vivienne. The revelation should have shocked him, perhaps even angered him. Instead, he felt an unexpected relief. They were both trapped in the same gilded cage. Why didn't you say anything? For the same reason you didn't, I imagine. Duty, expectation, fear of disappointing everyone. They stood in silence, the weight of their confession settling between them. Outside, the party continued, oblivious to the shifting ground beneath their carefully constructed plans. So where does this leave us? Fareed asked finally. Before Vivienne could answer, the study door opened. Robert and Eleanor stood in the doorway, their expressions a mix of concern and suspicion. Is everything all right? Robert asked, his gaze moving between them. We were just discussing some wedding details, Vivienne said smoothly, slipping back into her practiced role. In my study? Robert's tone was skeptical. Actually, Fareed said, making a decision, we were discussing our future, and I think it's a conversation that involves all of us. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. What exactly do you mean? Fareed looked at Vivienne, seeking some sign of what she wanted. She gave him a small nod, permission to speak the truth they had both been avoiding. I mean that Vivienne and I have been moving forward with this wedding because it's what was expected of us, not because it's what we truly want. The room fell silent. Robert's face flushed, and Eleanor pressed her lips into a tight line. Fareed, Robert began, his voice dangerously calm. I think you're under a lot of pressure. The wedding preparations, the merger negotiations, it's natural to have moments of doubt. It's not doubt, Fareed replied. It's clarity. Vivienne deserves someone who loves her completely, and so do I. Love? Eleanor scoffed. Marriage at our level is about more than some romantic notion of love. It's about building something lasting, something powerful. Mother, Vivienne interjected. Fareed is right. We've been going through the motions, trying to fulfill everyone's expectations except our own. This is absurd, Robert growled. Do you have any idea what's at stake here? The merger, the connections, your future on the board. I'm aware of what I'd be giving up, Fareed said. But I'm more concerned with what I'd be losing if I continue down this path. That girl, Eleanor said, her voice cold. This is about that woman from the cafe, isn't it? Some nostalgic fantasy from your past. This is about being honest with ourselves, Fareed countered. About recognizing that we've been living according to other people's scripts. Robert stepped forward, his imposing frame tense with anger. If you think you can walk away from this engagement without consequences, you're severely mistaken. I can ensure that Hassan Technologies never secures another major contract in this country. The threat hung in the air, explicit and chilling. This was the power Fareed had sought to align himself with, the ability to make or break fortunes with a single phone call. "Dad, stop," Vivienne said, her voice stronger than Fareed had ever heard it. "This isn't helping." "Vivienne, darling, you can't possibly agree with this. This defection," Eleanor said, reaching for her daughter's hand. Vivienne stepped back. "What I agree with is the need for honesty. Fareed and I care about each other, but we're not in love, and pretending otherwise would only lead to years of quiet misery." "This is your doing," Eleanor turned on Fareed, her composure finally cracking. "You've poisoned her mind with these romantic notions." "No, Mother," Vivienne said firmly. "For once, this is my decision, mine and Fareed's." The standoff continued, tension crackling in the air. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "If you go through with this, both of you will regret it. I promise you that." "Perhaps," Fareed acknowledged. "But I think we'd regret the alternative even more." As they left the study, the weight of what they had done, the bridges they had burned, the futures they had altered, settled on their shoulders. But beneath the weight was something else, a sense of freedom, of possibility, that neither had felt in years. Outside, in the cool night air, Vivienne turned to him. "So this is it. The end of the Blackwood Hassan dynasty before it even began." Despite everything, Fareed found himself smiling. "It's not an ending. It's a beginning. For both of us," she agreed, removing her engagement ring and placing it in his palm. "Go find her, Fareed. Find the life you were meant to live." As his car pulled away from the Blackwood estate for the last time, Fareed felt lighter than he had in years. The path ahead was uncertain, possibly filled with obstacles Robert Blackwood would surely place in his way. But for the first time in a decade, he was following his own heart, not someone else's blueprint for success. He took out his phone and typed a message to Nadia. "I have a lot to tell you. Can we meet tomorrow?" The response came almost immediately. "Same cafe, 10 a.m. Outside his window, the city lights sparkled against the night sky, reminiscent of the stars they had once watched together from a rooftop, dreaming of a future that now, against all odds, might still be possible. True north morning light streamed through the windows of Fareed's penthouse as he stood among half-packed boxes, surveying the life he was dismantling. News of his broken engagement to Vivienne Blackwood had spread like wildfire through their social circles, with speculation and rumors flying in every direction. His phone had been ringing constantly. Business associates wondering about the status of pending deals, friends, if he could call them that, fishing for gossip, his parents expressing their shock and disappointment. He had expected the fallout to be severe, but the reality was still jarring. Already, 2 major investors had pulled out of upcoming projects, citing restructuring priorities. A board meeting had been hastily scheduled for the following week, undoubtedly to discuss his future as CEO. The Blackwood influence was far-reaching, and Robert was making good on his threats. Yet despite everything, Fareed felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, his path was his own. His phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Channel 8. Business reporter requesting comment on Blackwood Industries' withdrawal from merger talks. "How would you like me to respond?" He typed back. "No comment at this time. We'll issue a statement next week." It was 9:30 a.m. In half an hour, he would meet Nadia at their cafe. What would he say to her? That he had upended his entire life on, the chance that what they once had might still exist? That seemed presumptuous, perhaps even unfair. She hadn't asked him to choose her. She had simply reminded him of who he used to be, who he could still be, if he had the courage. As he grabbed his keys, his phone rang again. His father's number flashed on the screen. With a deep breath, he answered. "Farid, what have you done?" Abbas Hassan's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Mrs. Patel just called your mother to express her sympathies about the broken engagement. We had to hear about this from others? I'm sorry, Baba. Everything happened very quickly." "Do you understand what you've thrown away? The Blackwood connection would have secured our family's position for generations." The disappointment in his father's voice stung, but Farid stood firm. At what cost? Marrying someone I don't love? Living a life that doesn't feel like my own? Love, his father scoffed. Love comes with time, with building a life together. You think your mother and I were in love when our families arranged our marriage? We built our love day by day, year by year. This is different, Baba. Yes, it's different because you're throwing away everything we sacrificed to give you. His father's voice broke slightly. When we came to this country, we had nothing. Nothing. We worked ourselves to the bone so you could have opportunities. And I'm grateful for that, Farid said softly. But you didn't work so hard just for me to be unhappy. There was a long silence on the line. Then, his father's voice, quieter now. Is this about that Rahimi girl? Your mother heard rumors. Farid closed his eyes briefly. Partly, but it's also about being true to myself. Another silence. You know her family had troubles. Her father was accused of... Her father was innocent, Farid interrupted. He was framed by his business partner. They lost everything because of someone else's greed. His father sighed heavily. Come to dinner tonight. Your mother is worried. About you. I will, Farid promised. And Baba, I hope someday you'll understand. He ended the call and headed for the elevator, checking his watch. He would be exactly on time. The cafe was nearly empty when he arrived. Nadia sat at their usual corner table, a steaming mug between her hands. She looked up as the bell above the door announced his arrival, her expression guarded. You came, she said as he slid into the seat across from her. Did you think I wouldn't? I wasn't sure what to think after your text. I have a lot to tell you could mean many things. The waitress brought his coffee, black, no sugar, before he could respond. When they were alone again, he took a deep breath. Vivian and I have ended our engagement. Nadia's eyes widened. Farid. It wasn't just because of you, he said quickly. Though seeing you again made me confront things I'd been ignoring. The truth is, we were marrying for the wrong reasons. She knew it too. I never meant to disrupt your life. Nadia said softly. You didn't disrupt it. You reminded me of who I am. He hesitated, then reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. The boy who sat on that rooftop with you, he had dreams that weren't about acquisitions or mergers or social standing. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. And now? Now I'm figuring out what comes next. Robert Blackwood is making good on his threats. I may not have a company by the end of the month. I'm sorry, she said, and he could see she meant it. Don't be. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. He finally touched her hand, gently. But I didn't come here to burden you with my problems or to presume anything about us. I just wanted you to know the truth. Nadia turned, her hand to clasp his briefly before pulling away. I appreciate that. But Farid, you need to understand. I'm not the same girl from the rooftop either. I've built my own life, my own dreams. I know, he said. I'm not asking for anything. I just miss having you in my life, as whatever you want to be. She studied him for a long moment. You're facing the fight of your life with your company. Is this really the time to be thinking about whatever this is? Maybe it's exactly the right time, he replied. When everything else is stripped away, you see what truly matters. Outside, rain began to fall, a gentle patter against the windows. They sat in silence, the weight of their shared past and uncertain future filling the space between them. Finally, Nadia spoke. I'm looking at a space for my restaurant tomorrow. It's small, needs work, but the location is perfect. She hesitated. You could come with me if you want. Give me your business perspective. It was a small opening, but it was enough. I'd like that. As they exchanged details, Farid felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Not just hope, but possibility. The next week passed in a blur of legal meetings, damage control, and strategic planning. As expected, Robert Blackwood had mobilized his considerable influence against Hassan Technologies. Major contracts were suddenly under review. Banking. Partners were expressing concerns about leadership stability, and the business press was filled with thinly veiled suggestions of company troubles. The board meeting had been tense, but not disastrous. Farid had presented a clear path forward, refocusing on innovation rather than expansion, leveraging their core technologies in new markets that weren't dependent on Blackwood connections. He'd been brutally honest about the challenges ahead, which had earned him grudging respect, if not full confidence. Throughout it all, Nadia had been a steady presence, not involved in the business aspects, but there to listen, to offer perspective, to remind him of what was worth fighting for. They had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, meeting for coffee or walks, slowly rebuilding a friendship that held the potential for something more. Today was different, though. Today was meant to be his wedding day. Farid stood at the window of his office, looking out at the city skyline. In an alternate timeline, he would be at the Grand Imperial Hotel now, preparing to walk down the aisle toward Vivian and the future they had planned. Hundreds of guests would be arriving, including politicians, business leaders, and celebrities, all there to witness the merger of two dynasties. Instead, he was facing the most challenging professional battle of his life while trying to rediscover what truly mattered to him. His phone chimed with a text from Nadia. Still on for tonight. They had plans to visit the space she was considering for her restaurant, a former neighborhood diner that had closed during the pandemic. It needed significant renovations, but the bones were good, and the location in a gentrifying area held promise. Absolutely, he replied. See you at 7. As he set his phone down, Tessa appeared in his doorway. Mr. Hassan, your parents are here. Surprised, Farid straightened his tie. Send them in. Abbas and Layla Hassan entered his office, his father's expression solemn, his mother's eyes full of concern. They had barely spoken since their tense phone conversation a week ago. Baba, Maman, he greeted them, coming around his desk to embrace his mother. This is unexpected. We thought you might need family today, his mother said, squeezing his hand. It would have been your wedding day. The simple acknowledgement of this fact, without judgment, touched him deeply. Thank you for coming, his father cleared his throat. I spoke with Robert Blackwood yesterday. Farid tensed. And? He is a proud man, vindictive. Abbas shook his head. He spoke of destroying what you've built. I'm aware of his intentions, Farid said carefully. I reminded him that Hassan Technologies employs over 2,000 people, many from communities that desperately need those jobs. That destroying a company out of personal spite would harm many innocent families. Farid stared at his father in surprise. You defended me? Of course I defended you, Abbas said, looking offended. You are my son. Even when I disagree with your decisions, you are still my blood. What did he say? He is still angry. but I think perhaps he will not be quite so aggressive in his actions. Abbas straightened his shoulders. I also told him that the Hassan family has friends too. Not as powerful as the Blackwoods, perhaps, but loyal. And that we stand together. Emotion welled in Farid's throat. Thank you, Baba. His mother stepped forward. We want you to be happy, Farid. If ending this engagement was what you needed to do, then we will support you. Even if it means my company. Fails? He asked. Companies can be rebuilt, his father said with unexpected gentleness. But a life lived without truth, that is a loss that cannot be recovered. The wisdom in his father's words struck Farid deeply. For all their differences, all their disagreements about his path, his parents wanted what all parents want, for their child to find fulfillment and purpose. There's someone I'd like you to meet, Farid said suddenly. An old friend who has recently come back into my life. His mother's eyes brightened with understanding. The Rahimi girl? Nadia, yes. He hesitated. We're meeting tonight to look at a space for the restaurant she wants to open. A restaurant? His father raised his eyebrows. She's a talented chef. She's been working toward this dream for years. His parents exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that only couples who have spent decades together can have. We would like to meet her, his mother said finally. Perhaps for dinner this weekend? I'll ask her, Farid promised, hope blossoming in his chest. That evening, as he pulled up to the address Nadia had sent him, Farid found himself thinking about paths, how they diverge and converge, sometimes circling back to where they began, yet never quite the same. 10 years ago, he and Nadia had sat on that rooftop, planning a restaurant that would never be. Now, here they were, standing at the threshold of a different version of that dream. The building was on a corner lot, with large windows and a small, outdoor space that could become a patio. Nadia was already there, talking animatedly with an older woman who appeared to be the owner. "Farid!" she called when she saw him. "Come see what Mrs. Patel is showing me." For the next hour, they toured the space, discussing possibilities and challenges. The kitchen needed updating, but the dining area had character. Exposed brick walls, original hardwood floors, even an old tin ceiling that could be restored. "What do you think?" Nadia asked as they stood in the center of the empty restaurant. Her eyes alight with excitement. "Can you see it?" "I can," he said honestly. "It has potential. But the startup costs will be significant. Commercial kitchen equipment, renovations, permits, it adds up quickly." Her face fell slightly. "I've been saving for years, but you're right. It's a stretch." "I didn't say it was impossible," he clarified, "just that it requires careful planning." "Planning is your specialty, isn't it?" There was a hint of teasing in her voice. "Among other things." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "What if I helped, not just with advice, but as an investor?" Her expression turned wary. "Farid!" "Hear me out," he said quickly. "This isn't about us or the past. It's a business proposition. You have the culinary talent and vision. I have experience in startup operations and capital. Together we could make this work. I can't ask you to do that, especially now, with your company under threat. You're not asking. I'm offering." He gestured around the space. "I believe in what you want to create here. And honestly, investing in something real, something that brings people together, that feels more meaningful than anything I've done in years." Nadia studied him, uncertainty warring with hope in her expression. "You're serious about this?" "Completely." He took a breath. "What was our original plan? The Starlight Cafe, right? Maybe it's time to revive that dream, in a new form." For a moment, she was silent. Then a slow smile spread across her face. Not the polite, measured smile of adulthood, but the unguarded, joyful grin he remembered from their youth. "Partners?" she said, extending her hand. "Partners," he agreed, taking it. As their hands met, Farid felt the last piece of his old life fall away, making room for something new, something built not on expectations or appearances, but on the direct foundation of who they truly were and what they could create together. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. In a different part of the city, in a grand hotel ballroom, his wedding would have been starting about now. A spectacle of wealth and influence, the culmination of a path he had traveled for years. Instead, he was standing in an empty restaurant, with peeling paint and endless possibility, holding the hand of a woman who had once known his heart better than anyone. A woman who, against all odds, had found her way back to him, or perhaps had helped him find his way back to himself. "Your parents want to meet me this weekend?" Nadia asked as they left the building, her expression a mix of surprise and nervousness. "They do. Is that okay?" She laughed softly. "It's unexpected, but yes, it's okay." As they walked down the street, Farid realized that for all the uncertainty ahead, the battles with Robert Blackwood, the challenge of rebuilding his company's future, the delicate process of rediscovering each other, he felt more at peace than he had in years. "You know, that day at the engagement party when I first saw you again," he said, "I thought fate was being cruel. Now, I think it was being kind." "Maybe it wasn't fate at all," she replied. "Maybe it was just us, finding our way back to where we were always meant to be." Above them, the first stars of evening appeared in the darkening sky. The same stars they had once watched together, dreaming of possibilities. Some dreams change, Farid thought. Some are delayed. But the ones that matter most have a way of persisting, waiting for the moment when we're finally ready to make them real. "Ready?" Nadia asked as they reached his car. "For the first time in a very long time," Farid replied. "I think I am." Together, they stepped forward into the evening, and into the future they would now build, not according to someone else's blueprint, but by following the true north of their own hearts.